Hey, it's Dr. Amanda with StraightSmile Solutions, StraightSmileSolutions.com, and I've got kind of a collage here of things I want to talk about. And the title of this lecture today is the top 4 things that I check each and every time I look at an Invisalign ClinCheck, and I look at dozens, if not 100 per day. I look at so many. And of course, we at Solutions work with any aligner company, any type of orthodontics. If it's orthodontics and it's legal, we're going to be glad to help you with it, as long as you are a licensed dentist. So I'm going to tell you some quick tricks and tips for ClinCheck 6.0. First, things that are in my head that I've learned the hard way that I always check on every single iteration of a ClinCheck. And if you've never worked with me one-on-one in a session before, you should check it out. Go to StraightSmileSolutions.com, click on services so you know what we offer. But this is something, once you work with me a few times, you learn as well. And there's always new things that we add. So do check out all our 3,000 videos that we have in our YouTube. And we make all of our content free and easily accessible for all doctors. I know there's doctors all over the world who need the help, and not everyone can afford one-on-one help. So this is my way to give back to the community, to the dental community, as well as to create awareness and to encourage really good orthodontic practices in this world with different types of vendors. So anyways, as always, there's a disclaimer. These are my opinions and only my opinions and the opinions of StraightSmile Solutions. If you are with Invisalign aligned technology and you do not like or agree with whatever I have talked about, and yes, these 2 icons are from ClinCheck 6.0. They are the property of Align Technology. I did take a screenshot of them because they are super critical to talk about. I'm not going to disparage them in any way. Align Technology, as always, if you do not like what I've posted, you are more than welcome to send me a friendly email and ask me to take it down or edit it. I appreciate your guidance as I create content. What I do not want is nasty letters from your legal team again and again and again, because ultimately I'm here to help people. So, and to make great orthodontics, and I'm sure it benefits you, even though I get no benefit from you. So, all right, I had to put that out there because I'm tired of battling with them. I'm making more and more content that you guys are requesting, and this is something you guys have requested, because the truth of the matter is you don't get it from Align Technology. Invisalign does not teach you this stuff. You have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to attend some of these sessions, and I still don't feel like they're telling you the truth a lot of the times. They're not telling the really, really easy stuff that's avoidable. And, mea culpa for them, they can totally make things better. And a lot of times they put out these videos, and to be truly honest, they do make things better. So that's why I create awareness about them, because if we all ask and keep asking, they are going to improve their software and improve their systems and operations. So here are things that at this moment with ClinCheck 6.0 that I do. So first thing I do whenever I get a ClinCheck is I'm going to go ahead and open it up, and I'm going to double check a few things. Now, of course, you need to be accurate when you submit the case. And I have a lot of different videos. If you go into StraightSmile Solutions YouTube, where everything is free and easily accessible, it costs me money to make the content, but I don't charge you guys anything at the moment. So you go in there and you search within my channel, StraightSmile Solutions. There's a tiny magnifying glass that YouTube puts in the top right, kind of top right corner. It's not quite the corner, just like top right. It looks like a super teeny tiny magnifying glass. Click on that, put in the keyword Invisalign, and all my Invisalign content will come up. In addition, I've made it easy. There's an Invisalign playlist. It's on the homepage. Scroll down. It's not at the very top because it's not always the most interesting thing to people, but it's interesting. And you can click all, everything that you need on the playlist. There's a lot of videos. There's like 150 or something like that. And I'm always adding. And deleting, as stuff gets expired and stuff, things like that. So you can watch all that content. And I can guarantee you, if you watch these things, you will start doing way better ClinChecks. You will sell more cases. Your stuff will be accurate. You'll have less revisions, refinements, and you'll make less mistakes, fewer mistakes. So, okay, again, let's get to the heart of what I want to tell you about. Top 4 or 5 things. First thing I do is I double check that I did everything right in submitting the case, okay? So you always have to take a pano. This is standard of care. Not an FMX, a pano. Because there's so many funky things that show up in a pano that wouldn't show up in an FMX. If you've worked with me before, I'm always like, where's the pano? Where's the pano? Where's the pano? Why is it not in your Invisalign? If you do not give your pano to the technicians, it's not going to be as good of a setup as if you gave the pano to the technicians, especially if it's a harder case. Duh. So there's a place to upload it, upload it. If you forgot to upload it when you submit it, make sure you have it right next to you when you're submitting it, and then email the pano to records@aligntech.com and put the case number in the subject line. Not that hard. It doesn't always end up in there, but supposedly they look at it, but it's better just to have it in there for reference, because what's going to happen is you're going through the various iterations of the ClinCheck. You're going to want that pano for reference. You're not going to want to have to go pull up your log in. If you're doing this from home, log into your account, pull up your Dentrix, blah, 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 dial into your server. What a pain. Just have it in the ClinCheck to begin with. So if you don't have it, don't submit the case. Just wait till you have it, right? Why? Because there's things we need to check in the pano, and I need to cross-check them against the ClinCheck to make sure that everything's going to be right. Now, just because you sent them the pano doesn't mean that they're going to interpret the pano for you. No. They're not. They might look at the root angulations, but they're not going to be like, oh, by the way, there's a supernumerary tooth. Are you sure you don't want to move it this way? Or, oh, all the way. By the way, there's a impacted third molar. Are you sure you want to distalize? No, they're not going to tell you that. That's your job to interpret the pano and to tell them what it means. But put it in there for reference, because it does really help the technicians out. And I've talked to a lot of technicians, both former technicians and current technicians, who do contact me from Invisalign. A lot of them are very, very nice people from Costa Rica, and they tell me the exact same thing. Please give us the pano. So they can't tell you that, but I can tell you what they tell me, okay? Then double check the pano against the ClinCheck. I want to make sure that I do not have attachments on crowns, okay, on bridges, on primary teeth, unless you want that, on implants, etc., on veneers. So I'm going to double check it just to make sure. What else am I double checking? Well, so there's a crown, there's an implant, and sometimes some crowns, if they're made with some nice zirconia and stuff, it's really hard to see it, so it helps to know your patient's restorative work. I'm also going to look at the movements. If they did some opening of space or any distalizing of any molars, well, I got to make sure that's possible, because if I've got this or this going on here, or this, any type of impactions, supernumeraries, well, guess what? I can't distalize necessarily, not predictably, especially if they're low enough to get caught up. Sometimes they can be crazy high, and sometimes you still can. Maybe this one you could, but certainly not this one you can't, okay? It's right at the height of contour. So, and of course you can't distalize here because there's an implant, right? So they're not going to tell you. Sometimes they'll leave a tiny little disclaimer, but most of the time they don't. If you tell them to distalize, they're going to distalize. If you tell them to open space, they're going to open space, even if it's not possible. What's going to happen if you shouldn't be doing it? Well, you're going to damage the teeth, and you could cause irreparable damage, and that's on you. It's not on them. So again, double check. Make sure no attachments. Make sure there's no movements that don't make sense based on the pano that you see, okay? So that's the first thing I look at, because even if I input it the right way, sometimes they don't read it correctly. Sometimes they make mistakes. And also sometimes as you go through various iterations, you forget to check and you're asking for things that aren't possible. So with every iteration, I'm always double checking. You can also utilize the note section at the top to put in special things that you want to remind yourself about, like, hey, impacted number 16, or hey, baby tooth down here, don't move, and sometimes using that note section is really helpful, because then it's just a quick reminder as you look at the case, so you don't have to go through and repeat all these steps again. Other thing I always double check when I first get started is the articulation. Now, if you're using an iTero, generally it's pretty good, but it's not always pretty good, okay? Always take your photos. When you take the photos, take them with articulating paper, tap, grind, and make sure that that's the occlusion. Make sure the occlusion on the articulating paper in the photos that you took matches the occlusion on the ClinCheck. So you go to aligner number 1 and you push the occluse button, beep, 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 right here, and we'll go over what the green and red means in a minute. You're only going to be able to usually see that on the initial and the final stage. If you're having virtual power chain, you're going to have to check it at the stage before the virtual power chain, okay, which is the blue, which we're not going into right now. If you want to know what virtual power chain is, again, go into my YouTube site, click on the magnifying glass, put in the keyword virtual power chain Invisalign, and it'll explain what that means. But yeah, double check your initial occlusion. Sometimes they give you a funky initial occlusion. Well, if the occlusion's not right and you don't check it, the outcome's not going to be right, and or it's just not going to track, and it's going to be a hot mess. I've seen it happen so many times, even with iTero. So always double check it. It probably happens, I would say, one of every 4 to 5 times with an impression and every 20 times with the iTero. It's still fairly common. I still see about one every other day, and maybe every day, where I'm like, whoa, back up. We're not even going to start with revising this until we get the articulation correct. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask them to re-articulate. Now, of course, if you've used the marks and taken your photos with articulating paper like I tell everyone to, this is a no-brainer. If you didn't do that, most likely, if they can't find an easy way to do it, they're going to ask you to retake your records, which may need a new scan, or it may need new photos with articulating marks. That means you're going to have to bring the patient back in, big pain. Okay, so might as well just do it right to begin with, to avoid that extra appointment. Big mistake if you just push through on that. I'm telling you, it's a big mistake. I've seen major damage done. Okay, and again, this is on you being sloppy and pushing for them to get started. They're not going to say no. If you tell them to do it, you're saying the articulation is correct. They give you a way to verify the articulation. It's your job to verify the articulation. All right, so now to another super important point. This is more towards the end, but you play the ClinCheck. And when you get to the final aligner before the virtual power chain, if you've requested that, it should have a dot up here, either green or red. And actually, it should be on your ClinCheck to begin with. That's the first thing my eye goes to. And it's super tiny, this little green or red dot, right? Now, this is new for ClinCheck 6.0. They did not have this before then. For a while with ClinCheck 6.0, whenever you were making a modification, if there was a red dot, they would say, hey, do you want us to fix it? Well, now they don't do that anymore. That prompt went away, and I don't know why, because it was very helpful. Maybe people didn't like it. Maybe it was like a temporary thing to create awareness, but it was really helpful because a lot of people forget to look for that red or green dot. Anytime there's a red dot, unless you want to go in there after treatment with a burr and hand equilibrate, what a pain. Don't do that. Don't do that. Just have it fixed, have it balanced. To me, it's just sloppy occlusion. And I don't really understand why Invisalign thinks it's okay to do that. I mean, I would love to. I've put it in preferences and I still don't feel like they stopped doing it. Like, just balance it right to begin with. Also, you should check, I want to see contact on all the posterior teeth. I want to see canine guidance if we're making this class 1. I don't want to see contact on anterior teeth. That's just my personal preference because it tends to cause fremitus. That's just what I want to see. And if a doctor asks me to, I'll put that in their preferences. I recommend that you put that in your preferences. It'll help to make your ClinChecks better, but sometimes they still don't even check preferences. So you still need to check that every single time. Okay. So, and then sometimes they'll make it like more occlusion on the right than the left. No, I want to see it completely equal, right and left, posterior teeth, like canine guidance, no occlusion on 2 to 2. So that's just something I look at. Really easy thing to prevent. Okay, so we went over all these. We went over this. Another thing I do automatically pretty much when I look at a ClinCheck is 9 times out of 10, I ask for anterior bite turbos. So either on the canines or on the anterior teeth, unless it's like an open bite case, an anterior open bite case, I find them extremely useful. The only time I don't ask for anterior bite turbos is when there's root resorption on the front teeth, kind of like here. See, we're having some root resorption here. I probably wouldn't ask for it there because it might cause the resorption to accelerate. So of course, again, check your pano. And or if there was an implant on the front teeth, I wouldn't ask for it there, or a fragile restoration, or if we had an anterior open bite tendency, I wouldn't ask for it. But this really helps to prevent the dreaded posterior open bite, which is just so freaking common, and it's not their fault. It's just plastic over the teeth. It just happens, okay? We're stressed, we clench, we grind, and you can't always tell. So I just put it in for preventative reasons as much as possible. Like I said, almost 9 times out of 10. I always ask them to remove it about 2 aligners before the end, because if you don't, they will leave you with overjet. A lot, like 2 to 2.5 millimeters, and it's too much. It looks stupid. So I'm not sure why that's not default. Again, I've been asking for that to be default for a really long time, but you just have to ask for them to remove it a few aligners early. So you could just double check and sock in the occlusion. Okay. Another thing that I ask for automatically is I call it double it. And if you worked with me before, as soon as I get a ClinCheck, I double it. If they tell me it's 15 aligners, I make it 30. If they tell me it's 10, I make it 20. That's just something I standard do, approximately double it, but I just find that their ClinChecks are too rapid. And for the most part, it's very difficult to get tracking on 7-day wear with their ClinChecks. I just find it's even a perfect patient has a very hard time with as fast as they make their ClinChecks. I think they're too aggressive. And by slowing and lowering the case, yes, it may take a little bit longer supposedly, but actually it doesn't take any longer because you end up having way less revisions or refinements, which means less plastic being used from the get-go, which means that the case gets done quicker because every time you have a revision refinement, you waste like 6 weeks. So if we can nail it the first try by taking the forces slower and lower, I'm sorry, I know that's your algorithm, but I've done enough of these cases between my own and everyone else who I've coached. I mean, goodness, aligner cases, 100,000. I mean, a ridiculous amount in my lifetime. Probably more than almost any doctor that's out there, just for the amount that I've seen. And I've been on companies with companies that do it. So I have a very good eye for what's predictable and what's not. And I tend to be less aggressive, take things slow and easy. Aggressive causes discomfort. Aggressive causes root resorption. Aggressive causes tracking issues, causes pain. Why? Why do you want that? Just take things slow and low. Forces are always better slow and low, right? Patient's gonna have a better experience. It's gonna be more likely to track the first time, less revisions, refinements. And of course, the scripting, I can't say this enough times. This is like basic scripting I say all the time. Aligners are meant to fit like a second skin, a wetsuit, or a pair of rubber gloves, perfectly fitting rubber gloves, right? There should never ever be a space between the aligner and the tooth. If there is a space between the aligner and the tooth, you need to use your chewies or your ortho munchies to get rid of the space. Or you go back to the previous aligner. Never throw away your previous aligners. Always save them. Save the last few ones. Keep them in a numbered box or whatever. Don't stick them back in the baggies because they get moldy. It's gross. So it needs to be someplace where they can be aired out or at least dried before you put them back in. And don't advance until it fits properly. If it doesn't fit properly, you should not advance. You can take a day or two and use your chewies to see if you can get it seated, but if you can't get it seated within 24 to 48 hours, go back to the previous liner, wear it another week, and then try again the next week. If you still can't get it seated, you need to give your doctor a call. Sometimes the doctors will say it's fine and they'll tell you to progress, but if it gets too off, there's really no point because things aren't going to track. So it's better to just go ahead and do the refinement. This, again, tends to happen more when you don't do the quote-unquote double it theory, which I do. It's much less common, or of course if the patient is non-compliant. Okay, last thing that you want to double check, and I'm kind of going in random orders here, is I like to check root scalloping. Of course you can, this is kind of a hack, you can of course look at a ceph too, and a ceph gives you numbers and you can see the bone in the ceph. You can also take a CBCT. As far as whether you should take a ceph or not, that's your personal preference. That's based on your own law, Dental Practice Act. Of course, most orthodontists take them all the time. I get very good at eyeballing them. Do we get numbers on them all? No, not always, because we're probably not even going to look at the numbers. But sometimes we do. If there's a big decision to be made, should we add IPR? Should we not add IPR? Should we distalize? Should we add elastics? Is the patient going to grow? Of course, we're going to pull numbers on it. And if you want help with doing that, that's definitely something. We have a ton of content. We have our own playlist on cephs that's there. But you know, if you're really interested in it, just get a textbook. It's really boring, to be honest. But you will, over time, be able to eyeball a ceph just like an orthodontist and be like, whoa, no, we're not doing this. And this is something Invisalign is not going to look at. They don't care. They're not going to look at your ceph. You can upload it, but they're not going to tell you. You're the doctor. You need to make the treatment recommendations. Obviously, if I see lower incisors like this, or even like this, first thing I'm thinking is, whoa, no, I'm not going to flare those teeth, nor am I going to round trip those teeth. If you don't know what round tripping is, you need to go into my site. Again, look at the magnifying glass, put in round trip. It's super important you know what round tripping is, because even if you didn't ultimately flare those teeth, you could super damage those teeth, gum, and bones by round tripping. But ultimately, if you see scalloped roots, if you see prominent roots and not a lot of bone, you do not want to flare those teeth. That is not Invisalign's job to tell you whether or not to flare the teeth. They're going to make the ClinCheck look like everything works out happy, pretty, fine, and dandy, because that's their job. Yeah, the video game says it's possible, but that doesn't mean it's healthy for the patient. That's not their job. That's your job. You are the diagnosing dentist. You need to know if this is healthy or not. And lower incisors can be very, very dangerous to try to fit everything in. Just a friendly reminder again, what are our options if we have crowding? This is one of my favorite things to test doctors on when I call them, not to give them a hard time, but I mean, think of it the way that orthodontists think of it. How do we deal with crowding? What are our options? Number one, expand the arch. Sure, we can expand the arch sometimes. Sometimes we can't. If the patient is older or has periodontal disease, maybe we can't do that, okay? In a young patient, we could do expanders first, or you can get some tipping, not necessarily translation or arch expansion with aligners themselves. So you can probably get a few millimeters through arch expansion. What's another way? Proclination of lower incisors or upper incisors, if you have the bone to do it. Again, cephs are super, super helpful. If I see them crazy angulated, in the bone, I don't see a lot of bone there, I'm not going to flare them forward. I know that I have to move them back. If they're super upright, I know that I can flare them. So that's why a ceph is super, super helpful, but you can also look clinically. There's a lot of things that you can look at. What's another way you can get space? Interproximal reduction? Sure. If you do all the sites on an entire arch, you can get up to 5.5 millimeters. That's a fair amount. That's very aggressive. I mean, I certainly wouldn't do that on a teenager. They're going to be sensitive for life, but I would maybe do it on an older adult, 50 plus. Sure, they're probably not even going to feel it. So there's 5 millimeters right there, a few millimeters with expansion if you can do that. Usually if they're older, you're not going to be doing expansion and proclination. You're going to do more IPR. If they're younger, like teenagers, you can do more expansion and proclination. Sometimes proclination, sometimes not. What are some other ways that you can get space? One of the most overlooked ways is distalization. It's one of my favorites, and you can do amazing stuff with distalization. Obviously can't do that if you have impacted third molars or even erupted third molars for the most part, because there's no place to move them. But if the third molars are out, you can distalize. Definitely a few millimeters on top. I've seen up to 5 to 6 millimeters. I've seen some wacky, crazy stuff done. Obviously you want to check the ridge in the mouth clinically. It isn't something that you can necessarily do all remotely. You also want to check the x-ray. But really, really cool stuff. And you can definitely get a millimeter or two on the lower as well. Again, check the ridge. I mean, obviously here you may not be able to. You can see the ramus. That's probably not possible. But, let's say this was out. Looks like you have a nice little chunk of space to move things into if you needed to. If it was a class 3 patient and you needed to distalize the lower arch. Hey, I'd rather distalize, do sequential distalization with some elastics to back up for anchorage than, do a ton of IPR or take out a lower incisor. But, that brings us to our other point, extractions. That's always another option to get space too. Lower incisors are great, especially if the patient's at edge to edge or a tiny bit class 3. Class 3 canine, easy. Or if they just have crazy crowding and it's just really, really obvious that this one would be really, really easy, why not? Yes, you could expand and make space and slide things back, or do some IPR further back and slide things back, because we know we can't move things forward, but that's going to take like way more time. It's going to take like 50, 60 aligners. Instead of just plucking this out, you could maybe do it in 20 aligners. Ultimately, that's up to the patient. A lot of people freak out with the idea of lower incisor extraction, but it's not as bad as you think. And I've got tons of videos on how to do Pontics and make it super, not obvious. So they're not worried about that. And that's usually the part that they're most worried about, is that like initial, oh, I have a little space, it's going to look ugly kind of thing. You can totally avoid that. And I'm giving you all my tricks and tips in one video. You can do the quadruple version. I know Invisalign's going to hate this, but if you have to take out, if you're missing an anterior tooth and the patient's like, it's a matter of like, either they're not going to do treatment or they're going to do treatment, they're super phobic about it, the patient can eat with the aligners in. It's super fine to eat with it in. It's just they're going to get gnarly and you can't necessarily go a whole week. So you need to at least change your aligners twice a week if you do that. But if they're eating with them in, you can do that. Just double it, triple it, slow down the treatment. And if they're eating with it in, it's going to go crazy fast. It's basically accelerated ortho. You can change trays every 3 to 4 days, and it's fine to eat with them in that case, they just eat with them in and then go into the bathroom, rinse and brush them, put them back in. It's not a big deal. And you can have the Pontic in there. And I have tons of videos on how to do Pontics for aligners. So that's pretty much it. This was all my tricks and tips. These tricks and tips can save you a ton of money, a ton of time, and I hope it was helpful. And if you are with Align Technology, hopefully you'll take some of my tricks and tips and implement it into your coursework. Just an idea. Please don't send me any nasty letters. I can't say that enough times. And thank you for letting me show pictures of these two icons. I know it's going to help doctors, and doctors that are being helped are going to do more cases because they're going to be happier with the product. And of course, if you're using ClearCorrect or another aligner system, they don't have a lot of this functionality, but the same concepts apply in terms of everything else that I told you. Definitely ClearCorrect has major issues with articulation. Unfortunately, they don't have the articulation marks. So, You just have to kind of eyeball it. It's kind of the reason why I don't like it. I think SureSmile does have articulation. Some of them do, some of them don't. I certainly would never use an aligner company that didn't have that functionality because I think it's super important. All right, thanks so much.